Once upon a time, there lived with its dam on the plains of Sylhet a young deer whose fame has come down through the ages in Khasi folklore. The story of the stag Lapalang, as he was called, continues to fascinate generation after generation of Khasi youths and the merry cowboys as they sit in groups on the wild hillsides watching their folks love to relate the oft-told tale and to describe what they consider the most famous hunt in history. The stag Lapalang was the noblest young animal of his race that had ever been seen in the forest and was the pride of his mother's heart. She watched over him with a love not surpassed by the love of a human mother, keeping him jealously at her side, guarding him from all harm. As he grew older, the young stag, conscious of his own matchless grace and splendid strength, began to feel dissatisfied with the narrow confines and limited scope of the forest where they lived, and to weary of his mother's constant warnings and counsels. He longed to explore the world and to put his mettle to the rest. His mother had been very indulgent to him all his life and had allowed him to have much of his own way, so there was no restraining him when he expressed his determination to go up to the Khasi hills to seek begonia leaves to eat. His mother entreated and warned him, but all in vain. He insisted on going, and she watched him sorrowfully as with stately strides and lifted head he went away from his forest home. Matters went well with the stag Lapalang at first. He found on the hills plenty of begonia leaves and delicious grass to eat, and he revelled in the freedom of the cool heights. But one day he was seen by some village boys, who immediately gave the alarm, and men soon hurried to the chase. The hunting cry rang from village to village and echoed from crag to crag. The hunting instincts of the Khasis were roused, and men poured forth from every village and hamlet. Oxen were forgotten at the plough, lords were thrown down and scattered. Nothing mattered for the moment but the wild, exciting chase over hill and valley. Louder sounded the hunting cry, farther it echoed from crag to crag. Still wilder grew the chase. From hill to hill and from glen to glen came the hunters, with arrows and spears and staves and swords, hot in pursuit of the stag Lapalang. He was swift, he was young, he was strong. For days he eluded his pursuers and kept them at bay. But he was only one unarmed creature against 1,000 armed men. His fall was inevitable, and one day, on the slopes of the Shillong mountain, he was surrounded, and after a brave and desperate struggle for his life, the noble young animal died with 1,000 arrows quivering in his body. The lonely mother on the plains of Sylhet became uneasy at the delay of the return of the stag Lapalang, and when she heard the echoes of the hunting cry from the hills, her anxiety became more than she could endure. Full of dread misgivings, she set out in quest of her wanderer, but when she reached the Khasi hills, she was told that he had been hunted to death on the slopes of Shillong, and the news broke her heart. Staggering under the weight of her sorrow, she traversed the rugged paths through the wild woods, seeking her dead offspring, and as she went, her loud, heart-rending cries were heard throughout the country, arresting every ear. Women sitting on their hearths heard it and swooned from the pain of it, and the children hid their faces in dismay. Men at work in the fields heard it and bowed their heads and writhed with anguish of it. Not a shout was raised for a signal at sight of that stricken mother, Not a hand was lifted to molest her. And when the huntsmen on the slopes of Shillong heard the bitter cry, their shouts of triumph froze upon their lips, and they broke their arrows in shivers. Never before was heard a lamentation so mournful, so plaintive, so full of sorrow and anguish and misery as the lament of the mother of the stag Lapalang as she sought him in death on the slopes of Shillong. The ancient Khasis were so impressed by this demonstration of deep love and devotion that they felt their own manner of mourning for their dead to be very inferior and orderless and without meaning. Henceforth, they resolved that they also would mourn their departed ones in this devotional way, and many of the formulas used in Khasi lamentations in the present day are those attributed to the mother of Stag Lapalang when she found him hunted to death on the slopes of Shillong hundreds and hundreds of years ago.